How's everybody? Do me a favor. Turn to your neighbor and share with them what risk you think that we're facing more than we've ever faced in 2018. What do you think the risks for 2018 are going to be? I'm going to start on this side of the room. What do you think? Yeah. People suing. Yeah, that's pretty much going to happen, isn't it? We're a more litigious society than we've ever been. And I'm going to talk about the reason why we're that way. And the reason why risk reduction classes change that mentality, reposition you to think differently. Anybody on this side? Anybody else? Wow, you guys. What's that?
Not proper responding to multiple offers.
Not responding to multiple offer situations and having that discussion. How about over here? What did anybody think about over here? This is a participation part.
Social media.
Social media. We just heard that social media is going to be a big issue for what part of our business? Advertising. Advertising, and not only that, but using it to talk about competitors, which becomes a risk issue. And if you've never been to the Department of Justice website, by the time you get to it, you're terrified. Because here's what I want you to think about the Department of Justice. They just call the federal government and say, we need more money. Let that sink in. When you call your attorney, he says you need more money and you have to go to your credit card to get more money. So they are able to do things for a longer period of time and position themselves. So I kind of want to talk to you about my trip this week. I had an opportunity to go to Zappos. Has anybody taken the Zappos tour? Wow, what an amazing tour. So we're going through the tour and we get to this one section and they're kind of like Imagineers. And you know, at Disney, they're like Imagineers. And I'm looking at this box and I'm looking inside the box, which you can't see, but I'm going to show you in a second. And I'm like, what is that box used for? See, what happens historically is when a box is sent to a Zappos client, and here's what I want you to write down. Zappos has 50% of their clients that use them all the time. And they have 20% of their clients that the 50% refer. So 70% of their business they never have to advertise for. Now, wouldn't you like to have a business that 70% of your business came because you didn't even have to advertise? And the reason why that happens, and the reason why we have problems in the real estate business, is expectations. See, the expectations of Zappos, if I don't like my shoes, I can return them with no questions asked. Does everybody understand that? So I have really strong expectations. Now, what happens to clients in the real estate business is they have extremely strong expectations. Are they always realistic? And that's why risk happens, because people's expectations are here and their reality is where? Down here. And so we try to gap that. And so what Zappos did is Zappos says, we want our box to be used for more. And so, you know, everybody says, think outside the box. Zappos says, think within the box. And so I want you to think about this mentally in our business and transition this to our business. See, the real issue in our business right now is everybody wants to go out and be real creative versus being real special and taking the information that is already there and helping it become better. And so all the classes that are on your list, how many of you have this list of classes? See, what I was hoping is some of you would say some of the things that I'm going to talk to you about. Now, why are you coming to this class? You should be wanting to come to these classes or come to that, is to complete your business circle. Do we have a clicker? Okay. All right, that's okay. Complete your business circle. See, in the real estate business, we've got to complete our circle. And I want you to remember to go back to a movie that was made in 1995. And some of you may or may not have seen it. It was called Lion King. Right? And in the movie Lion King, they talk about the circle of life. Well, every real estate transaction has a circle. Hopefully we close it up. So the business circle is to do the right thing all the time. So let's go back to expectations. People's expectations are high, but reality becomes the thing that makes their expectations go down. And when their expectations go down, what do? They get upset with who? They get upset with us. And so that's where the risk starts. Is their expectation so high, the reality is not there, and then they get frustrated because they think we should have done what to protect them? Everything. They don't understand where we're at. And so we've got to complete our business circle. Oh boy. So one of the things I notice in the practice of real estate is that people don't like to practice. People don't like to practice. You know, I'm hiring new agents right now. I'm talking to new agents, and I say, you know, you need to go out and do CMAs. Well, why? I don't have any clients. I know. That's why I want you to go practice. Because if you learn how to do CMAs, then when you have to do a CMA in 15 minutes, you can do a really good one. And then I say, why don't you write some offers? Why don't you practice by writing offers? And they say, well, I don't have any clients. And I say, that's right. And the reason why you don't have any clients is because you don't know how to write any offers, because you're afraid to write the offer. So you get the client, and then you're afraid to write the offer. So it's a vicious circle. So practice, drill, and rehearse. We are in the entertainment capital of the world. And people don't want to do presentations, and they don't want to do them in a way that is repeatable and duplicatable. So you do a presentation, if we're on the strip, you hit that mark, the light comes on, and everybody knows you're supposed to be there. Imagine spending $150 for a Circus Olay ticket, and the light's here, and the performer's over here. What would you think about that show if every time somebody was supposed to be in the light, they weren't there? Would you think maybe they didn't what? Maybe they didn't rehearse. Maybe they didn't drill. Maybe they didn't practice. And if you know those people in that industry, what do they do all the time? Practice, drill, rehearse. Practice, drill, rehearse. Practice, drill, rehearse, because they want their performance to be seamless. And that's why real estate agents sometimes get a reputation of not doing the right thing, because their presentation is not what? Seamless. It has to be seamless. And so when we look at this, don't practice until you get it right. Practice until you get it wrong. See, the real estate business is no longer where brokers would train you. See, NRS 645 says the broker's responsibility is to train you. But right now, there's so many brokers that are so busy. Our average, at least years ago, our average broker was 5 people in the brokerage. And so brokers don't have time to train because they're out trying to make a what? Living. And so they can't train. But their responsibility is, and so they still have higher risk. So it becomes your responsibility, if they're not giving you training, for you to go out and get training. The problem is you're getting CE training that is, and don't take this wrong, please, because I work here, the CE credit sometimes is just brush the surface. It doesn't go into the detail. So what this course does is goes into the detail. It goes deeper. In fact, the reason why when we started in 2004, most of the instructors that teach this class are attorneys. Now, the reason why we wanted attorneys to teach classes is because we wanted you to have an in-depth conversation with somebody that had a unique perspective of the real estate business. And what I mean unique is because they were suing you. Does that make sense? And so they knew what you could and couldn't do wrong. Who's that guy? Anybody know? Phelps. How many Olympic gold medals does he have? Anybody know? And more than anybody else has ever had. I think it's 24 or 28, somewhere between 24 or 28. Probably nobody will get that ever again. And when he came back to do it again, they said, what made you want to do it? And he said, I missed the practice. I missed the practice. See, when you get out of the real estate business, I got a little thing here. It means I've been in the real estate business 40 years. It's got 4 little, yeah. It means I'm emeritus this year too. So, yeah, thank you. Emeritus means I don't have to pay anymore. So the cool thing about 40 years in the real estate business is that I have seen everything go right and wrong. I have seen us do really good in the real estate business, and I've seen us do really bad. I've seen us in a recession, and I've seen us out of 2 recessions. And what does that mean? It means that when people get hungry, they decide to do different things that they shouldn't do. They make decisions over money versus making decisions over the right thing to do. So, what you need to do is you need to start your day off today looking at procedures. What are your procedures on a daily basis to make you successful in the real estate business? So develop a use of standard procedures with everyone. It is a fair housing issue. Now, a lot of brokers don't train fair housing in their office, but I can tell you, when you go to the Department of Justice website in 2017, there was 18 cases where real estate agents were involved in fair housing violations. Now, a lot of those were something you wouldn't expect. A lot of those were in reference to property management, where agents made a decision that a family of 5 shouldn't be on the 5th floor, they should be on the 1st floor. Is that their right to do that? No. And so fair housing violations have a lot of different things. So one of our classes talks about how do you make sure that your procedures are repeatable, duplicatable. As a perfect example, do you have a questionnaire and do you ask everybody the same questions? And if you're not, why aren't you? Because if a Martian walks in and you treat them differently, you could be in a liability position because of that, and you've got to be cautious of that. One of the things I know from my other free job that I do is that if you were to have a phone log, if you were to have a log where you actually did the right thing, and every time you spoke to somebody, you wrote down in that log the name, telephone number, what you talked about, what you promised to do, you would have less problems someday when you got sued. And I got some brokers in the room, and I can assure you a broker would love to go to your file, open up that file, and look at a phone log and be able to put that file together and be able to say, this is what we did during that time period. So a phone log is gigantic, and it's this simple. You get a yellow tablet. You write name, telephone number, and date, and what you spoke about. And every time you talk to that person, you just write it in. It is so simple. And here's where I know it works. Because doctors do it all the time. How many of you have gone to a doctor in the last 6 months? Go to a doctor, and before they leave the room, what do? They mine talks into his computer on his desk. Hi, I'm here with Lee Barrett, you know, he's still fat. He thinks he's funny saying that. It kind of hurts me a little bit. He says, Lee's blood sugars are good, they're not good, blah, blah, blah. And he gives the whole explanation, because if he's going to change my medication, what does he have to be able to prove to the insurance company? Why I'm doing it. So phone logs are gigantic. This is the simplest thing for us to do. And that is, when we're done with the conversation, at the point that we're done with the conversation, we send an email. Based on our conversation today, this is my understanding. If I am, and I want you to write this down, if I am incorrect in that, please email me back. Because what that says is, your silence is deemed acceptance. Does that make sense to everybody? Your silence, Mr. Buyer or Seller, means you've accepted what I said we talked about. Now, if you were to go into court and be able to have that, do you think that would be more powerful than just you saying, I told them this? See, a confirmation email, really powerful. Keeping good records. Some of you think you keep good records. And I think you do. But I know that when you get investigated, they don't think you do. When you get investigated by the real estate division, they ask you for certain things, and if you can't answer that, it puts a little bit of doubt in their mind that you actually did what you said you were going to do. So if you have really good records, and what I mean by that is you have your phone log, you have your email log, what else would you put in there? All the forms. What else? What's that? Text messages. Text messages are now being subpoenaed as part of lawsuits. Text messages are being now subpoenaed. So we heard from the attorney about the Department of Justice. Almost everything you do now, your Facebook postings, everything is subpoenable. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm using it today. So everything, yeah, I'll put it in the dictionary next week. So keeping good records is really, really important, and it's to a point where your records have to be so detailed because we are in such a litigious society. Oops. So, go back to what I started off. Educate and set proper expectations. One of my students in another class came up to me and was kind enough to tell me that they're using one of the tools that I gave them at a class, and it's called absorption rate. And they're one of 1 to 3% of the people in the United States that actually use it. And the conversation is, if somebody's expectations are brought down to reality prior to you going out with them, then you are going to have a better experience with them because their expectations are not here where the reality of the market is here. So at these courses, you're going to get tools to actually use in your practice. In fact, before you leave that day, that instructor is going to make sure that you have tools to be able to use in your practice that day. Yes, sir?
Are they still being taught by lawyers?
Most of them are, yes. Yeah. Most of them being taught by lawyers. Use a checklist. Now, a lot of you say, I've got a checklist with my broker, and I hate that thing. That's good. I'm glad you hate it. Because it's very important. Because I fly a lot. I'm going to fly this week, San Antonio, Sunday night, or Sunday. And you know what? Every time I get to the airport early, intentionally to watch this. And I watch the pilot and the co-pilot show up to the airplane. Now, what I know the co-pilot's job is, so I really pay attention to this, is get out of his seat and go do what? Walk around the what? He actually walks around the plane. And he's touching the plane. I love that part. Because he's touching the plane because he wants to make sure it's real. And so he's touching the plane. He touches all the equipment that's supposed to move up and down. And then he goes where the tires are. And I didn't realize this until I sold a pilot a house. I said, what is he looking at? He said, commercial airline tires have a color line in them. And after a certain number of landings, it starts to change colors. And when it gets to red, he's supposed to say, everybody do this with me, put your hands out. Stop in the name of love. So he's supposed to say, stop, we're not taking this plane. Because if we take this plane, what could possibly happen when we land? Poof, tire blow up. So we're not going to risk the lives of 250 people on this plane because of that. So he has the right, he has the expectation, he has the responsibility, he has the risk management to look at that and say, I got to stop that. So let's equate that to us. I'm doing an inspection. I'm not the inspector, but once something is pointed out, what is our responsibility become? To get it what? To get it fixed. So we have to write the form out properly. We have to follow through. Well, they're not getting back to me. That's where the email log becomes important. You send somebody 12 emails saying, you need to get back to me, you need to get back to me, you need to get back to me. Now, about the 6th one, you start CCing the broker's email. What happens then? The brokers in the room. If you start to get an email about a transaction that nobody's following through, what are you going to do? Make a phone call. Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Start getting involved. You cannot afford oops. Oops is your deductible. My deductible is $5,000. That is a oops I don't want to afford. Somebody sends you a notification, I'm going to sue you. That just became a $5,000 oops. You can't afford oops. If you're doing everything that we're talking about, your oops are limited. Because every time you get an oops, oh, oops, we did that, oh my gosh, now we're getting sued, now we got to defend ourselves. Legal hotline gets calls. One of the major calls they get called on is contracts. Number one call to the legal hotline is contracts, which is the saddest thing I can ever imagine. How many contracts class do we do a month? 2. We do 2, so we're doing 24 a year. They can go any place else in town and do a contracts class. Now the reason why we started this group, the risk reduction group, my board of directors and myself, is back in 2004 we had 84 different contracts. Let that sink in. We had 84 different real estate contracts. And at any time, one of those real estate contracts could have a may or may not put in them. And we had agents that weren't doing what? Reading them. And so another broker would have changed their contract and we wouldn't have known about it. So therefore the risk became even higher. So what we did is we did reverse logic. We went to the largest brokers and we said, bring your attorneys and let's sit in a room and let's figure out how we can write a contract that everybody wants to use. Instead of going to all the membership, we went to the top brokers. And at that point, what we were able to get is the top brokers to bring their attorneys and say, we would like to see this, and here's the reason why it benefits the whole. In the state of California, everybody thinks they have a required form. The state of California contracts are not required by brokers there, just like ours isn't here. But it is a good thing because when something gets tested enough, and that's what you've got to remember. Some of us remember when we used to have to hire attorneys to write our agreements. And now you had to be lucky enough to have an attorney that wouldn't put you in a position that you got sued because they put the wrong information in. So when you use the fundamental contract from the association, what you do is you use a standard based on insurance policies. See, the insurance companies always ask me on my renewal, what form are you using? If I were to say, oh man, I made up this really cool one, they would probably say, guess what, your insurance is really going to go up. Well, what I say is, I'm using the form from the association, and I can see their heartbeat start to go down because they're saying, good, somebody else has actually used that form and tested it, and it works. Does that make sense? So why don't more people understand the contract? And so what we do in the risk reduction classes is we spend 3 days, 3 full days exploring the contract, not 3 hours. We spend days going over the contract, so by the time you get done with the contract, what's it gonna be like for you? You're gonna know that contract up, down, sideways, and all around, and that's really important because the real issue is if you don't know the contract, you don't know how to use it effectively. Now there's 2 ways to look at the contract, and our attorneys teach you how to do that. First way to look at the contract is the way the buyer's agent looks at it. And the second is how the seller's agent looks at it. Because the seller's agent looks at your contract totally different. When you say, now I'm going to take 10 days to get the buyer to go ahead and get with the lender, the first thing the listing agent says is, why didn't you get that done first? So they teach us how to position those people. We're going to teach you in these classes how to build systems. What we see in the real estate industry around the country, and I teach around the country, is that people don't have systems. They don't have a system that starts with the meeting and goes all the way through to the closing. See, a system allows you to not have to think. See, if you build a system, someday you can give that system to somebody else. How many of you would like to sell your business someday? Well, if you have a system, then your system is repeatable, duplicatable, and you can give it to somebody else to do. But the problem is, if you don't have a system, it's just whatever you do. Plus, it's something you can't go to the judge and say, Your Honor, this is what I always do. Well, prove it to us. The 5th sale, the 10th sale, the 20th sale that year, you can prove that you use that same system each time. One of the other issues that come against the state association is full and complete disclosure. Full and complete disclosure. In fact, I'm just getting some of my my renewals coming over from my E&O insurance, and they send me these kind of newsletters. And in the latest newsletter, they said that 78% of all litigation in real estate is what they believe, what the consumer believes is non-disclosure. So 78% of it comes back to us because the client believes we knew, but we didn't what? Didn't tell them. That's kind of scary, isn't it? So our classes teach you how to make sure that without having to say, by the way, I'm telling you the truth, that you can prove it. See, fact is better than fiction. Fact is better than opinion. And so we're going to teach you in these classes how to show and sell. Now you might be saying, why is he saying about our classes? Because what I want you to do is I want you to get energized. If you decide to come onto this committee, we need your blood. We need your new blood. We need your energy. We need you to say, I want to make a difference in the real estate community. In a couple of slides, I'm going to share with you that I got to that point in my career. I got to the point in my career. In fact, I used to be the biggest troublemaker at this association.
I can second that.
Yeah. I used to have hair down to here and an earring. And I remember standing up, and when this room didn't exist, and I stood up, and I stood up with the commercial screw, and I said, this is what's happening to you. Anybody remember those days? And so I was the person that was on the outside, and then somebody came to me and said, you can't be on the outside and get anything done on the inside. And so then I got to be president of the association. And so as president of the association, one of the things we looked at with this committee was, why do we need a committee to protect us against litigation? And that was kind of an aha. We knew why we needed it. Real estate ads, big scam right now. You got real estate agents out there that know by state law and by our code that they're not supposed to advertise like for sale by owners, but they are. And so they're advertising to get leads from clients and not doing the right thing. Or they're advertising improperly and the consumer feels that they're being duped by them. Another call that the website or the legal hotline gets a lot of. In our association, in our state, almost everything has to be mediated. Almost everything has to be mediated. And so what you got to keep in mind, if everything has to be mediated, can I defend myself in a mediation? Am I positioning myself? If you're being risk management minded, you've got to say, here's my systems, here's what I do. So if this person misunderstood something, they shouldn't have, because I have this checklist and I have everything else. See, in mediation, you want to be able to get across, because sometimes mediation, not our mediation here, but sometimes mediation actually sets you up for a lawsuit. And it gives them opportunities to get information. A few things to remember. Just a few. You should go to the Nevada Real Estate Division website periodically. Why? Because they know you've been there. Your IP address. If you haven't read the state laws since you took your exam 40 years ago, you probably should reread them. Because what it is called constructive notice. The reason why you have CE classes is not because they think that you're going to maybe pick something up. It's something called constructive notice. And constructive notice means we've told you, we've told you, we've told you, we've told you. Does that make sense? And so now that they get a complaint, and the complaint turns out to be truthful, we already told you you shouldn't be doing that. So constructive notice. Now, about 2 years ago, I got sworn in. Now, I got to tell you the reason why I gave you this picture. One of the saddest days was when this happened, because my parents weren't there. My mom and dad weren't there. I basically grew up in the real estate business. My dad started our business in 1959. I wanted my dad to be there. I wanted my mom to be there because it is an opportunity, because I didn't want to be a real estate commissioner to make my life miserable. I wanted to be a real estate commissioner to make the real estate business better. Does that make sense? To do something to give back to my community, to give back to the community that helped me be successful. So here's some cases. Now I've retracted the names of the individuals there. We had a case in 2015 where somebody forged, this is a brilliant idea, they forged their CE credits. They forged their CE credits, and I want you to look at what the fine was. $30,000. $30,000 for forging.
You mentioned we have free classes.
We do have free classes, that's right. failed to utmost protect the public and find misrepresentation and unethical practices of real estate, converted money to their own use from general account, deposited 14 times, salesman's license revoked, $160,000 fine. Might want to write this down. Every fine is $10,000 an incident. $10,000 an incident. May 2016, engaged in business or acting capacity in advertising and assumed an act as a real estate broker and property manager without obtaining a real estate license. So I want you to understand that we have the opportunity to find people that aren't even licensed. Because in the state of Nevada, just like if you practice law without a license, you can be found guilty of practicing law without a license. Keep that in mind when you're making these decisions on people's earnest money and everything else, that you actually sometimes are crossing over to what? Practicing law without a license. Violated NRS 645 by making material misrepresentations, and this is what I shared with you a little bit earlier, regarding supposed purchase of property, violated NRS 645. You notice how explicit they are here? 633I. Present NAC 645, 605 by breaching the obligation of absolute fidelity. What does that mean? What does absolute fidelity mean? You had an obligation to what? Their best interest. See, nobody cares if you ever get paid at the real estate division. Does that make sense? They care that you protected the consumer, because that is a consumer protection. It goes on to say, also converted money into others for their own use, failed to maintain a place of business within the state. Didn't even have a place in the state to practice business. Violated by failing to provide paperwork to the broker within 5 days. This is a fine, punishable up to $5,000. Violating by accepting compensation from a person other than their broker. This happens all the time. And it's so simple to let your broker know. I get agents all the time that get a Starbucks card. And they go, that's half yours. I said, I know. No, I'm just teasing you. But the reality, yeah, so you only get a half a latte and I get the rest of it. Drink half and then we're done. Deposit other monies in consideration trusted to them. So I want you to understand, it starts as a misunderstanding because expectations are high. It keeps on working its way through until when? It's so misunderstood, so frustrated, so upsetting that they file a complaint at the real estate division. The best way to make the world a better place is to show up. So if you decide to start coming back to this committee meeting, which this is going to be a committee meeting, we want you to show up to make the world a better place. Pay it forward. Pay it forward. Come down here to help people to pay it forward. If something has happened to you and you're trying to help somebody, pay it forward. That's what this committee is about, is helping people understand that there's something better to do. You can all be superheroes. It's not hard to be a superhero. And sometimes we get into these pow and bam situations where we're trying to work through what's the best thing for the real estate community. I know that you have the potential to be a superhero because you are one of us. You have that big R. In fact, has anybody seen that sweatshirt downstairs? Yeah. Man, I bought one of those and I wore it. Somebody actually asked me what it was. And I said, I'm a superhero. And they go, wow, really? I go, yeah. I know I'm the first chubby one, but no. Here's what my whole goal of today was, is I'm asking for the order. I'm asking for you to actually volunteer. To take one Tuesday a month, or Thursday a month, every second Thursday. Come here and help this group that's already got some members be the best they can possibly be by caring about yourself, but caring about others more and paying it forward. And I hope you enjoyed the class. Just wanted to put some stuff together so we could talk about it. And thanks to the chair and the vice chair and Anthony for inviting me. Thanks.